Welcome to the Block Exploring podcast, your first step into the world of crypto and blockchain. The Block Exploring podcast is your one-stop place to find quick, clear, and unbiased information on everything in the crypto space. Our goal is to help you grow familiar with the crypto space by growing along with us as we go on our crypto journeys. Follow at Block Exploring on Twitter for our newest uploads and our publishing schedule. We, here at Block Exploring, are crypto enthusiasts working hard towards becoming experts. Today's podcast is presented by co-hosts Tommy and Elias. Find us on Twitter under @SabaiSquared and @OtokoCrypto. Right now you can find us on Spotify and YouTube. Before we start the episode, we would like to inform you that we are not financial advisors. Therefore, nothing said in this podcast should be considered financial advice. Always contact your financial advisor before making any investment. With that said, sit back and enjoy today's podcast. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 13 of News Bytes on the Block Exploring podcast. This week we'll be discussing the state of the market, how it stayed relatively the same as last week, and we're going to be discussing what will revitalize the market. So we're going to be discussing the Elon and Jack keynote talks, Jack not liking Ethereum, Bitcoin needing to break a resistance or remaining at certain price levels, and the Soros capital boost that we see as an opportunity. Then we're going to discuss the Ethereum and Cardano updates and the strike fees. So, Tommy, this week's market stayed basically the same. I don't know how that was for you.
I mean, it's much more, it's easier to manage, I suppose, than when it's uber volatile and the emotions are running and, you just want to be checking the price all the time and you're reevaluating your strategy like constantly. It's pretty calm, when the markets are doing what they've been doing for the last week to just like recollect and go about things in a much calmer manner. But obviously that, just sort of means that the space is in a bit of a lull as well. There's not much to speak about unless you're talking about, developments or NFTs or, it just really depends what kind of niche you are in the space. There's always something to talk about, but in the way of price action, it's a bit, so at least Bitcoin and ETH are up, in the past 7 days.
That's true. Yeah. The week price is positive compared to last week's. I think that was what I tweeted about at the start of the week. That like when you discuss crypto prices right now, there's not a lot of activity going up because there's not a lot of hype surrounding crypto due to just like the crash that happened like May. And therefore people won't be as interested. You see it in all kind of crypto YouTubers, their views are going down. There's a bit less interest, which means that it's a great time to buy. I think you can see that as a signal, definitely. So I think it's important to talk about what will revitalize this market and what kind of bullish signs we see for like the long term and for the short term, maybe even July.
Yeah, before that, I want to say, it's interesting you say that like YouTube influencers are getting their reduced viewer counts, because now I notice a lot of clickbaity, even more clickbaity YouTube video titles, and it's just so cringe, because it's just a reach for most of these titles that they put out, and I feel like it's so off-putting, actually, when it's so like such an obvious clickbait. But that's why you just gotta curate your information, but it's cringe.
No, definitely. I think it's also a lot of the, people want the market to be at its optimum, at the most bullish. So there's a lot of kind of wishful thinking going on. I see kind of like these, like, did you buy the dip? Did you buy the dip? Sometimes, you shouldn't buy the dip if you, are illiquid.
If you don't have any money, don't buy the dip.
Exactly. Yeah, don't buy the dip then. You can you can buy a peak in 2017. That's also fine. But I think you shouldn't get too distracted, especially as an investor, on all this kind of like wishful thinking that's going on in, I think, the content creation side of the
Yeah.
space.
So is in their
I
best
think you should
interest to pump stuff, or
yeah,
to put this clickbait out there and that. But it is what it is,
yeah, and I think if you look at the more realistic things, like what is actually happening in the space, what's happening in the
Mm-hmm.
news, you can see some very bullish
Yeah.
signals, but they're not as hyped as you
Mm-hmm.
might think. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of upcoming events, I guess, that are widely known of and that have big audiences. So Elon Musk and Jack from Twitter, they'll have a keynote talk,
Mm-hmm.
Jack Dorsey, and they'll be discussing Bitcoin, and that will be somewhere July, I
Yeah.
believe. And I think the extra, speaking in front of an audience, two major voices, especially when it comes to crypto, that are also part of kind of mainstream media coverage and have large corporations behind their names that are very well known. I think something like this, even the discussion mentioning Bitcoin, can be very bullish for the space and get a lot of people back into it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think this
Yeah.
keynote was sort of the product of a very interesting Twitter exchange between the two. And yeah,
Hmm.
so I think definitely this keynote has the potential to be pretty bullish on the space. I think it'll be like a great opportunity for Jack, who's very active in the Bitcoin space and community, who's I think
Yeah.
quite obviously a Bitcoin maxi, to sort of iron out a
Yes.
bit of Elon's misconceptions or misgivings that Elon might have towards Bitcoin and its community.
Hmm.
Because I think a lot of, I mean, I don't want to discount Elon and his intelligence. He's obviously a very intelligent person and who's doing amazing stuff. But I think a lot of his activities around crypto kind of indicate that he might have just jumped the gun on crypto and just sort of went into the deep end before really understanding what it's all about. And he just really jumped into the deep end and had to walk back a lot of things after he's had a look at this or that, or he's talked to this person or that person. So it'll be just really interesting to hear those two talk about Bitcoin specifically and what they both view as the future of Bitcoin. And hopefully it is bullish, because I mean, I can obviously see it's like a quote being taken as just a completely bearish thing sentiment, and
Yeah.
hopefully that doesn't drive everything down. But I think overall it would be bullish to have Jack Dorsey on the mic, because usually he's
Yeah.
tweeting stuff, but he doesn't necessarily make these public speaking appearances in such a way.
That's true. That's true. And I definitely like what you said. Definitely Elon has, maybe at the start of his crypto engagement, been a bit overzealous in, sharing his
Yeah,
ideas without having done, I guess, like sufficient research. Like when he said that, I don't know, for Doge, the block size should just be 10 times as
yeah.
large and the processing speed faster, which, I mean, it's not really possible.
It's not
But
necessarily ideal either, and yeah,
true.
but hopefully people have stopped putting so much weight as to what he says in regards to
Yeah.
crypto and allowing that to drive price action. I mean, recently at least he tried to pump Doge again, or a Doge knockoff or something, with one of his
Yeah.
tweets, and that by all accounts failed miserably apparently. So maybe that's a signal that the community as a whole is a bit over the Godfather, the Doge father. You know.
That's true. I think they've also realized that Elon Musk, he just needs to grow a bit more in the
Hmm.
space, that he's definitely a smart guy when it comes to, doing business and rocket science and all that. But perhaps crypto isn't his, he isn't a crypto prophet like a lot of people used to
Hmm.
attribute to his name.
And no one really is
Uh,
a crypto prophet. Like, I mean, this is such a quickly evolving space. I mean, there's very like knowledgeable people in this space, but
mhm.
say one person is like a prophet or an oracle, so to speak. Like that's pretty heavy title to put on someone, heavy crown, you know,
That's true. I think definitely for you have like some large voices
for
in the
sure.
space, like like
Hmm.
Rob Paul and those kinds
Yeah,
of
yeah,
people. They're definitely like I guess like within the community for a longer
yeah.
time and
Respected voices for
fairly
sure.
respected. Yeah, but they're no longer do we have a lot of hype investors that are just following every tweet of Elon and making sure to buy more on every tweet, which drives the price up like
Yeah,
crazy. So yeah, I think it's good, and I also think it will be very interesting to hear Jack talk about the fact that he isn't the biggest fan of Ethereum, and give
yeah.
reasoning why.
Curious if he'll
Maybe it's
even
something
talk
we haven't
about
heard.
that. But
Yeah,
yeah, Jack just clearly not a big fan of ETH. I mean,
no,
because Twitter recently dropped a bunch of NFTs, which received like mixed reactions, right? But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what makes them valuable aside from the fact that you know um, Twitter dropped them. But it's not like it's not like his NFT of his first tweet. It's not like it's not there's no historical value to
yeah,
this NFT, that might bring it some value. I think it's on par with these like celebrities who've just jumped into the space and just because a celebrity has dropped an NFT doesn't make the NFT valuable or desirable or but Twitter's jumped in like many
that's true.
other companies or people, actors or celebrities and that. And someone on Twitter was saying like, "Oh, you see, Twitter's dropping, NFTs, so maybe we'll see Jack, have more positive." I'm paraphrasing, but Jack might come on and say
Yeah,
that he's
yeah,
buying ETH, or Jack might be more positive about ETH, and Jack was just like, "No, no, he's not into it," which is, I mean, ironic because his company Twitter had to have obviously bought
yeah.
ETH and spent ETH to mint these NFTs, but Jack was just like, "Nope, no go."
Nope, not a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's true. But I think overall the engagement of Twitter with crypto is
Mhm.
something that and also like the fact that it's the platform itself. I think if you look at crypto, I think Twitter is one of the main
For sure.
channels where the information
Mhm.
gets shared, and I think that the platform itself engaging with crypto is a massive bull sign
Mhm.
also for anyone who is on Twitter because they will hear
Yeah,
about it you
definitely.
know
Yeah, it's interesting because Twitter doesn't publicly own any crypto at the moment, despite Jack being
yeah
a huge proponent of Bitcoin. His other company, Square, owns a lot of Bitcoin, but Twitter
yeah
is a bit has been a bit reluctant, and I think it has to do with well, maybe the shareholder structure or whoever's at the top, whoever's on the board.
hmm
Maybe it's just very hard for for this company to get crypto, isn't to be more pro crypto. But I
yeah
find I find that if any company aside from maybe big players like Apple or and that Twitter might you know in the near future have a that's just my prediction, Bitcoin, or at
yeah
least Bitcoin, because Jack is such a maxi,
yeah
on the balance sheet, and he's also like indicated that he wants to integrate the Lightning network onto Twitter as well. So that's
yeah
well, how they do that. If they do that, I think that'll be very interesting as well. Might also be
yeah
a
definitely.
revitalization catalyst.
Oh, I think so for sure. Twitter engaging with crypto and if it would decide to buy up some crypto would be massive.
Mhm.
Like during the peak of well, I guess I don't think the bull run's over, but I think the peak of the last of the bull run so
Mhm.
far, um, we saw things like relatively to an event like Twitter picking up crypto, the events were fairly small. There were things like PayPal accepting Litecoin for
Yeah.
merchant payments, which almost doubled the price of Litecoin. these kinds of developments. But something like Twitter buys Bitcoin, a headline like that is something we haven't seen in a while. We saw Tesla buys Bitcoin, and that already shot the price up significantly. Now imagine some massive media channel engaging with the token or with the coin. That would generate.
That'd be huge. I think.
Yeah, that would be that would just dwarf, I think, the past events. And I think especially if we see something like Bitcoin breaking the top resistances that it's been facing right now, a lot of people are like selling off at like 32K and buying back in at 29. Yeah. This is euro. Something like an actual breaking of the resistance. That would be extremely bullish.
It's gonna take a big event, though. Take a big,
yeah.
Something has to happen for it to really drive up, or we need a new player, to come in.
Yeah.
Whether it's another company or some big institution. Yeah, it really depends. What it's hard to gauge. What will move sentiment in crypto market. Because I guess some might say this market's very trigger happy in either direction, to move quickly. So it's hard to say.
Yeah. No, definitely. And, we might see something like that happen with Soros Capital. Soros is going to invest in Bitcoin, or has already invested in Bitcoin to a certain extent. We don't know exactly, of course, because it's very possible that the capital management by Soros has done so already, has bought in already before announcing any involvement with Bitcoin. And some are saying that this is very positive. Others are saying, it's positive because more liquidity is flowing into the market, and a significant player like Soros's management fund, that's a lot of liquidity. But others are saying George Soros, his management fund, they might negatively affect the price, massively short Bitcoin, and then sell off and cause a dip, which I think is something to take into account. But I think that the increase in capital flow and just the general news of a large player entering the market of buying Bitcoin, holding Bitcoin, I think that can be generally seen as very positive as well.
Definitely. There's obviously been a lot of positive sentiment behind news that someone or like an institution like the Soros Fund getting into Bitcoin, and that could be a lot of capital that comes in that drives price in some direction. But there's also been a lot of skepticism, because a lot of people have negative connotations associated with the Soros Fund, and they think everything that Soros Fund touches goes bankrupt, or people have some interesting ideas about the Soros Fund. So I'm curious if they let that conception of how they feel about the Soros Fund drive their actions. I mean, I think some people believe the Soros Fund will short Bitcoin. I think that's where a lot of negative sentiment comes from. So
I think so, especially from past memory or recent memory, where I think we had there was Black Wednesday in the UK. If you lived in the UK, I think especially you know about that, but where Soros broke the pound, between quotation marks, where he basically shorted the pound and created a lot of bad PR and a lot of hype around the pound being overvalued, blah blah blah. And in effect, this short worked out because, partially due to this public campaigning of Soros. So some critics think that this might be possible for Bitcoin as well, if Soros decides to take this kind of course of action. So and others, on the other hand, they're saying when Soros shorted the pound, he hyped a lot of other investors up to short the pound as well. And he's a very leading person, he's just all over the world.
Right.
Soros doing this to a currency with a finite amount might trigger a massive, wave of fear of missing out with even institutional investors, which I think is also very possible.
For sure. I mean, we'll just have to keep a close eye on it, I think, and just see. It'll be interesting to use that as like a case study for how people react to different players entering the market and that. So
yeah,
and they're a big player, so we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's I think if it works out positively, I feel like the topics that we just discussed and what we're going to discuss about the Ethereum and Cardano updates altogether might be, like the perfect storm to revitalize the market. I think if all these things happen in a very short time frame, compared to each other, and a lot of news starts building up again around this, I think that can revitalize the market. And I think, especially since the keynote will be around July, I feel like July will be a very nice month again, where you might see your portfolio in the green again, and where you'll see more adoption coming back into the market and more actual use of crypto as well.
I hope so. These are like very pump-worthy events that are happening in July. And I'm just curious whether this actually, because I think definitely a lot more news will be will be proliferating around this topic. I'm not sure if mainstream media will catch on to it, but definitely in crypto spaces, like this is definitely big events that people are going to talk about a lot. So that's why I'm curious to see whether we'll actually get any new investors coming into the space, or will it just be investors who've already been in the space accumulating more in the anticipation of these updates, and that, which could lead to several scenarios that I see, that it either, it becomes the catalyst for, a nice little run for crypto as a whole, or, or for these particular, for Cardano and ETH and maybe these other Ethereum competitors potentially. I'm curious if it will actually affect the wider market. I'm sure Bitcoin will also see a bit of a bump from that as well. But the other side of that is also that, people might accumulate in anticipation of these updates, and then they sell the mainnet, which is not unheard of, but it's also like, bruh.
No, that's true.
Bruh. You can't. I guess a lot of people lost a lot of money, so I guess you can't hate on people, for doing this kind of thing. It's just how people choose to invest sometimes.
No, definitely. And I think especially with the updates that are coming in Ethereum and Cardano, that we'll see. I think that all this hype can happen, and indeed, the more long-term investors might stay, and not much new money will get into the market based on as in like new investors. But I think definitely there's a possibility that these new updates in Ethereum and Cardano, which are mainly around smart contracts, and that will lead a lot of new people, especially from maybe into NFTs and these kinds of more, I don't know how to phrase this, niche markets of crypto, maybe more, more usage-based markets of crypto. I think that will be very bullish.
For sure. Yeah, especially for Cardano to finally be allowing smart contracts to be deployed. I think it's been a long awaited update for the Cardano smart chain, and it'll probably drive a lot of developers to start learning about Cardano blockchain, hopefully start building onto it, and that overall is very bullish in the long term. And with Ethereum, I think this update is going to be pretty huge overall. Moving from proof of work to proof of stake and the many various updates that it'll bring, but it also represents a very small update in the wider vision of Ethereum, which is also bullish. I find, that this is, this it's not little, because it's quite a significant update that's been long awaited as well. Is just one update in a, like, getting us to a larger vision of what Ethereum will become, and what in a few years we might see as like the real disruptor of financial system around the world, which is a bullish, if you ask me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think right now a lot of the news is the boring yet important news. It's not the stuff that generates a lot of hype, because it's not a very direct correlation. There's not per se a massive company that's right now buying a Bitcoin, which will generate more scarcity. It's a lot of long-term focused development that's going on that isn't very accessible to the I don't know, like the non-crypto native. It's not as like obvious why this adds value, and why this is significant, especially for like the value of these cryptocurrencies. So I think definitely, if not this month, in the coming months, we'll see I think a revitalized market, a market that's ready to go again.
No, makes sense. Well, hopefully, in the near term, we see more excitement and more developments, and it's going to be interesting to watch how July unfolds for the crypto space, because we're here for a bear market, we're here for a bull market. We're not going anywhere, so we'll be here for your weekly crypto block exploring.
You'll see whether July has turned out to be a fruitful month for us, or at least the first week, or if it's the opposite. Next time we'll see you on the Block Exploring podcast. Peace out.